My name's Nigel Culkin and I'm the co-president of the Institute of Small Business and Entrepreneurship. And the overall purpose of ISBE is to enable excellence in small business and entrepreneurship education, research, policy and practice. When the UK's Enterprise Research Centre put a call out for the establishment of a number of communities of interest, then ISBE was very keen to get involved at the very early stages. And so we put a proposal in with a number of universities and a data aggregator in this space, and we were successful. And we are running the second of the workshops to share knowledge, share experiences, and to ask questions today at the Hertfordshire Business School in Hatfield. Today is a very creative day. It was built around a keynote talk by Professor Colin Mason from the Adam Smith Business School in Glasgow, who's just published a major piece of work around business angels. And in this morning's sessions, we will have a number of practitioners who will be looking at the state of play from their perspective. In the afternoon, we will move on to 2 round tables, which will be chaired by leading academics, one interested from a research perspective and where the research could be and will be and might be going in the future, and one from a teaching perspective, which I think is very important.
What I really want to talk about today is change. The angel market is in a quite dramatic period of transition. That's what the market was like. It is changing now to a very visible market, characterized by angel groups. Angels are no longer investing on their own, they're getting together. This change has been largely ignored by scholars. My name is Colin Mason. I'm Professor of Entrepreneurship at the Adam Smith Business School at the University of Glasgow. My area of interest is business angels. I've been researching that area for the last 25 years or more. Who are business angels? High net worth individuals who invest their own money, either alone or with others, directly in unquoted businesses in which there is no family connection. Paradoxically, there's not really very much research being done on angels. I think the lack of data, particularly lack of data sets, is one of the reasons why there's been relatively little research done on business angel. Research tends to go where the data sets are. And I think it'd be unfortunate if social investment and alternative finance didn't attract research attention simply because there wasn't the data sets available. Clearly, we've got a new actor on the scene, the group manager, the gatekeeper. Do the gatekeepers screen investment opportunities in the same way as solo angels do? We have to rethink the messages we're giving to entrepreneurs about how to be investment ready in an era of angel groups.
Use technology to speed up elements of the process, to make the thing more efficient and more scalable, but you cannot get away from the need to have experienced, sensible human beings looking at things and sense-checking them. I don't think you can really argue it is alternative anymore. I think it's becoming part of the mainstream of the way finance is done. My name's Andy Davis, and by background I'm a financial journalist, and these days I'm a writer on finance, business and investment with a particular focus on alternative business finance. I'm pleased that the academic community is taking an interest in this because I think some very exciting and interesting things are happening in financial services and in business finance. I think the aim of the community should be to ensure that there's a real understanding amongst people who study enterprise of the range of ways that businesses are going to fund themselves in future. And I think it's very valuable, therefore, that we get lots of practitioners, but also lots of academic contributors here. My involvement is to share practical experience of what I think is actually happening in the market. Anything that can be funded any other way can usually be funded this way too. Conventional and alternative, old and new, are increasingly merging. The system as it exists now is not necessarily the system that will exist once people really figure out what the risks are.
My name's David Priceman. I live locally. I've been involved for many years in the field of what's broadly known as alternative finance, which is private equity, and more recently the crowdfunding arena. Certainly myself, and I hope other people in sort of alternative funding, are not anti-bank per se. Perhaps where banks do let themselves down a bit is more on the service side, because you do hear a lot of complaints about banks that are very slow to make a decision, or first of all they will say yes and then months later they come back and they say, oh, actually the credit committee has said no. In absolute terms, the crowd as an investor is growing, but in percentage terms it's very much falling away. There's probably a need for community in every industry, in every sector, because business is done between people. This is quite a small industry still, people know each other personally, and so at a national level, even at a regional and local level, it's important to engage with the practitioners in the industry. So yes, having that personal engagement, networking, attending events like this, all of that is very important.
So in 2015, we saw over 4.9 billion invested into UK companies in equity finance. My name is Stella Hamari. I'm a researcher at Bohurst, which is a market research firm tracking startups and scale-ups in the UK. So this is a heat map of investment activity through 2015 in the UK. Within an area such as alternative finance, one that's growing and maturing and developing, I think there are always going to be a lot of questions, both from business and from academia. So to have a kind of forum where people can come together and talk about what they're realising, what they're finding out, and what's coming up is really interesting. We see ourselves as being an important source of information on the equity markets. Also, as we are a subscription service, and we provide this information in a structured and easy way to people within the industry. We noticed a real decline in investment, equity investment in Scotland before the referendum. So we're predicting a little bit of a slowdown before we know what's happening with Europe.
My name is Theodora Hadji-Michael. I am Policy and Research Manager at Responsible Finance. What you can see here is that we are lending where banks are not, and those actually also happen to be areas of higher deprivation. Well, access to finance remains a significant barrier for a number of micro and small businesses, and responsible finance exists to fill this gap. For every £1 that our members lend to businesses, they generate £7 in local economic value. Customers or businesses aren't aware of the alternatives to bank finance. They're not aware of how to access them, whether to trust them, whether they'll be around in 3 years or 5 years if they need to access finance again. By being part of this community and engaging with the other alternative finance providers, academics, policymakers, and other institutions that are part of this community, we can raise awareness and work together as a more inclusive system.
It's a forum to discuss alternative finance, which is a very exciting emerging area, both for practice and research and policy. Emerging alternative finance is potentially quite fragmented. There's stuff on angels, and there's work on crowdfunding and venture capital and so on. And the way things are developing, these are actually quite interrelated. So I think a community of interest is a way of bringing that together and seeing how these complement each other, to what extent they're different, how they relate to traditional areas of finance. That kind of discussion, I think, needs to have a rigorous analysis to really say, well, what's really going on? Let's try and abstract from the two sides of that debate, and so we actually take a more sensible view of the effectiveness of these forms of alternative finance, which is then going to have implications, not just for research, but also for policy and for the practice of entrepreneurs.
One of my expectations from today is hopefully to see papers developed for the conference, the ISBE conference, taking place in Paris in October, where we can see ideas that have maybe shared today are developed into conference papers and then on into journal articles.
My name is Katya Mozacheva. I'm a lecturer in enterprise and also an early career researcher. I've been involved in putting together an application for funding to make this workshop happen, and I also together with my colleagues, submitted an abstract to ISBE conference in 2015, where our paper got accepted and we got an opportunity to present it at ISBE conference in Glasgow. So it was an extremely valuable experience, as we met lots of people whom subsequently we kept in touch and actually invited them to participate in the current workshop. But apart from all that, we received an extremely valuable feedback, which allowed us to work more on the paper and develop it further, and eventually it got accepted to be published in the International Journal of Entrepreneurship and Innovation. Out of the whole community of interest, and thanks to the involvement of ISBE within this community, we managed to take the step forward and put up together another abstract, which was submitted to the ISBE conference in 2016. So fingers crossed that it will get accepted and we will manage to visit Paris next year.
Another expectation that I have is that we develop the community of interest into what ISBE then will call a special interest group, which will have its own committee, its own members, and that we can be supported in a much more robust way from the ISBE virtual office. And once that's in place, we can attract more members and we can certainly promote the whole area of alternative and entrepreneurial finance.